buzzer beaters, the crowd, the Cinderellas. College basketball is a beautiful game filled with the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. The start of every season brings a fresh start for every team and every player. A chance for teams to fold under the burden of their expectations. A chance for teams to receive redemption for a previous season that was cut shorter than they had hoped. And of course, chance for teams and players expected to do nothing to shock the world. This channel will be dedicated to discussing and analyzing all that goes on in the college basketball world. Welcome to the CBB Report. There is unfortunately lots of time until the beginning of the college basketball season on November 8th. That said, with the transfer portal winding down and declaring for the draft over, rosters and schedules are starting to take shape. With that, let's go through each conference and rank the teams. Today, let's do our two early 2022-2023 rankings for probably the toughest college basketball conference, the Big Ten. While I love ranking teams, I do not believe it gives a full picture on the different levels of competition between teams. Sometimes the 7th best team can interchange with the 8th best team and vice versa. That's why I created 5 tiers for the Big Ten rankings, the worst being Tier 5 and the best being Tier 1. Tier 5 I named Feeding Frenzy, the bottom barrel of the Big Ten. Tier 4 I named Potential. These were the teams that had some good pieces to them, but a lot of flaws. While they might have the best upset potential, did not have the team to provide consistent winning. Today, we'll focus on Tier 3, which I've named Interesting Pieces. This tier is my biggest, with 5 teams in it. It is also the tier that I'm least confident in. I went back and forth on many of these teams. This tier happens to also be the most volatile. Some of these teams can reach Tier 2 by the end of the season, and 1 or 2 might drop down to Tier 4 by the end of the season. All the teams in Tier 3 have very interesting pieces, but for a plethora of reasons, they are missing something that stops them from being in the top 2 tiers. So let's start with the worst team in Tier 3, and number 9 on my list, Ohio State. Ohio State had a very successful 2021-2022 season, finishing 12-8 in the Big Ten, which was good for 5th. The bad news for Ohio State is they lost their 2 best players, Malachi Branham and E.J. Liddell. Branham went to the Spurs with the 20th pick in the draft, and Liddell was signed with the Pelicans. Just these 2 players made up 44.6% of the scoring for Ohio State. So what did Ohio State do to replace those guys? Well, they only got the best recruiting class in the Big Ten, got 3 good transfers, and returned Zed Key and hopefully now healthy Justice Suing. Head coach Chris Holtmann has had a great offseason. Coach Holtmann also reinstated his commitment this year to playing the new freshmen. So with the 7th best recruiting class in the country and the best offseason in the Big Ten, why is Ohio State only at number 9 on my list? Well, I'll admit that this is much lower than a lot of the experts have them. Most experts have them at 5 or 6. It comes down to my personal thoughts on freshmen in the Big Ten. While many do succeed in year 1, it usually takes freshmen a year to get up to speed with the pace and physicality of the college game, especially in the Big Ten. Add on to the fact many of the starting rotation and bench rotation will be completely new pieces in a new system. Ohio State will most likely get off to a slow start. Chemistry is important, and Chris Holtmann has a tough job this offseason coaching his team to have chemistry and adjust to the Big Ten. Oklahoma State's senior transfer, Isaac Likele, should help with that. While Likele is not much of a scorer, he is a mismatch playing point guard at 6'5". He plays very good defense, with a defensive rating averaging out in the mid-90s his last 3 years, and he's a good passer and rebounder, averaging 3.4 assists and 5.5 rebounds respectively last year. He should be the stable point guard that Ohio State needs for their young new team. While the rest of the starting lineup is hard to predict due to the incoming freshmen, transfer Sean McNeil will most likely start the season as well. Averaging 12.2 points while shooting 36.8% from 3 and 54.6 true shooting, he will be a solid player in the Big Ten. Both Likele and McNeil might lose their jobs to the high 4-star guard recruit Roddy Gale Jr. and Bruce Thornton. I project these 2 to start on the bench for the Buckeyes. Both of these players are extremely talented and have a chance to lead this team by the end of the year. I expect Eugene Brown, Zed Key, and Justice Suing to also get starting times, as all 3 are returning players. Key with increased minutes and Suing with better health both have an opportunity to step up for Ohio State, and if they do, this can be a scary team. One issue with this team is they are kind of small. Key might start at the 5 and is only 6'8", which is a hard height to guard the skyscrapers in the Big Ten. Because of this, expect 6'11" 4-star freshman recruit Felix Okpara to get some minutes at the center to add size to this team. Add in solid bench piece Seth Towns, Wright State junior transfer Tanner Holden, who averaged 20 points and 7 boards at Wright State last year, and also has a big chance to start over Eugene Brown, and 4-star small forward recruit Bryce Sessenbaugh, and you have a very interesting team. I'm going to say it right now, but this team can totally bite me in the ass and not only lead tier 3, but can hop up to tier 2. The problem is there are a lot of floating pieces for the puzzle to fully connect. I expect growing pains in year 1 with all the freshmen, some big wins against better teams and some bad losses against way worse teams. And then in the 2023-2024 campaign, this will be a truly scary team that can contend for a title. But for now, they sit at number 9 on my list. At number 8 sits the team that tied with Illinois for the regular season Big Ten title with a 15-5 record in the Big Ten last season, Wisconsin. Last year, the Badgers had the surprise season of the Big Ten. In the preseason, they were ranked around the 7th or 9th best team in the Big Ten. Then, Johnny Davis broke out and became the Big Ten Player of the Year, and with him, Wisconsin defied all the odds to be tied with first place by the end of the year. They would have been actually first place outright if not for a shock loss to Nebraska in the last week of the regular season. This year, Johnny Davis was picked 10th by the Wizards, and with his departure, I'm putting Wisconsin back in 8th. Along with the departure of Davis, Wisconsin also lost a 5-year starter in the heart of the team, also every other Big Ten fan's most hated player, Brad Davison. Despite these 2 losses, this team is not bad. Stephen Krall and Tyler Wall give Wisconsin a very good front court. Wall has improved every season at Wisconsin, and last year he averaged 11.4 points per game and 5.9 rebounds per game. Even though he can't shoot threes, he has the best field goal percentage in the country, and he also plays hard, with good defense evidenced by his 96.9 defensive rating. Krall is also a very solid center that can compete with the other skyscrapers in the Big Ten, and can kind of stretch the floor with a 32.9 3-point percentage. He also had the best offensive rating on the team last year. Rounding out their solid big 3 is Chucky Hepburn, who has already hit 1 game winner for the Badgers and has a chance to take a huge jump from last year. Wisconsin prides itself on player development, and Hepburn has the handles, the shooting stroke, and the tenacity to take the reins of the offense. He only had 8.2 points per game last season, but really turned it on late in the season before suffering an injury that sidelined him for the tournament. His passing will also be a strong asset for the Badgers. Joining these 3 in the starting rotation most likely is Wofford transfer Max Klesmit, who might not be able to fill the leadership role Brad Davison had on the team, but has similar production numbers on the court. Kamari McGee, the transfer from Green Bay, is not a bad depth piece, but his numbers at Green Bay were not eye-popping, and I expect him to take a bit to get used to the Big Ten. The same thing goes for 3-star recruit Connor Essegayan, who's most likely going to start on the bench. Jacoby Neath and little brother to Johnny Davis, Jordan Davis, will most likely fight for the last starting spot, with the loser becoming their team's early on 6th man. And both pieces are good but nothing special. At the end of the day, this team is very solid. They will make opposing teams work every night with a balanced attack and a balanced defense. But what propelled them to their success last year was the unexpected rise of Johnny Davis. Without him, unless someone random again steps up to take his place, I'm looking at you, Jordan Davis, continue the legacy. This team just does not have enough firepower to not be in the middle of the pack. At number 7, and in the middle of the tier 3, is my beloved team, Rutgers. Rutgers had a great season last year, finishing 4th in the Big Ten with a 12-8 record. Rutgers is another team that has all the intangibles. Head coach Steve Pikiell always has this team playing hard and fighting for every loose ball. With Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year Caleb McConnell coming back, this makes the Scarlet Knights one of the most formidable defensive teams in the Big Ten. Metrics can't even explain how good McConnell is at defense. You have to see it on tape or in person. He was really the only person to shut down Johnny Davis last year, and whether on ball or off ball, he wrecked play after play in their upset of then-ranked number 1 Purdue last year. He just is a game changer defensively. Paul McKay is also a mismatch as a 6'6" point guard. He showed offensive flashes last year, as well as some lapses. After a huge sophomore season, Cliff Amore this year is ready to go up against the likes of Hunter Dickinson and might be a top 3 center in the Big Ten. He also is a human highlight reel, as he had the most dunks last year in all of college basketball. Jersey Mike's Arena is also one of the best home court advantages in the Big Ten to have. Along that Big 3, they added transfer from Loyola, Maryland, Cam Spencer, a shooting guard that will most likely start at the 2. He should give Rutgers a good 3-and-D player, as he has shot 38.8% from 3 in his college career. The starting spot for the 4 is going to be an open competition. Andre Hyatt has always shown promise since being a 4-star recruit at LSU, but he has never really lived up to it consistently. Last year he had some moments, but overall he relaxed on defense and had horrible shooting splits, shooting 36% from the field and 28% from 3, with a rough 93.8 offensive rating. I think he'll get the starting nod, but can quickly be replaced by either Dean Reber or Mawot Mag. Dean Reber became a cult hero last year, putting up pretty impressive numbers as a stretch 4. Obviously this is a small sample size, but he shot a ridiculous 58.3% from 3 last year. The issue with Reber is his fit with Amore is questionable. Yes, Reber can shoot the 3, and this lineup would be ridiculously tall, but unless Reber takes another step up with his handles, he can't really have the ball in his hands. He's more of a spot-up shooter or looking to receive the ball at the block and score. Amore, despite always teasing fans with his shooting ability, at this moment can't shoot either, consistently. So the floor spacing would be weird. Mawot Mag would be my favorite to start by the end of the season. His numbers last year were inefficient and not great, but he showed great flashes while dealing with a lot of teeth injuries. He had a bunch of semi-clutch shots and even was second in the team in scoring twice. He has grace on the court and can hit a corner three and can also slam it down. His defense isn't bad either. If he can improve with the shot creation, defensive consistency, and offensive efficiency, he can easily take the starting spot next year. Add in a bunch of interesting bench pieces in sophomore defensive maestro Jalen Miller, freshman 3-star recruit Derek Simpson, 3-star recruit Anton Woolfolk, and 3-point specialist Oscar Palmquist, and you got an interesting team. So why is Rutgers at 7? Well, it comes down to scoring and especially isolation scoring. They lost their two best scorers in Geo Baker and Ron Harper Jr., and debatably their two leaders on the offensive side of the floor. Derek Simpson is an underrated prospect that has a similar game in Geo, he even wears his number, but I don't know how impactful he can be as a freshman. I just do not know who this team goes to with the ball late in games anymore. Geo and Ron were not only great ISO scorers, but super clutch. Their loss is going to sting for Rutgers. Maybe Mulcahy or Mag can take the next step up. Is it enough to replace both Harper Jr. and Baker? I don't think so. This team will struggle to score the ball, and sometimes you just need a guy to take the ball, bring it up to the floor, and get a bucket. And I'm not just seeing a guy that can do that this year. If they can find it, they'll move up, but for now, they stay at 7. In 6th in the Big Ten, and 2nd in Tier 3, I have Iowa. Iowa finished 5th last year with a 12-8 record. I have them much higher than most media members, but I'm not really sure why. Maybe it is because they lost the second best player in the Big Ten last year, Keegan Murray, as he was picked 4th in the draft by the Kings. And they also lost one of the best 3-point shooters in Big Ten history, plus the heart of the team, Jordan Bohannon. You could also ding them for not having a good offseason, as they got no transfers and had an okay recruiting class. But as I look at the pieces this team has now, I think they'll be just fine. We know head coach Fran McCaffrey coaches teams that are offensive juggernauts, and that shouldn't change this year. Chris Murray is no Keegan Murray, but who is? He's the closest to Keegan Murray as you get. First off, quite literally, he is his identical twin, but he also plays a very similar game to Keegan. He has a chance to really break out this season, as there are times even last season he took over their offense for 2 to 5 minutes. He had 123 offensive rating last year and a 25.4 net rating, which just showed Chris Murray's value to the team. Do not be surprised if he takes over the Iowa team and fills Keegan Murray's shoes as well as anyone can. If he starts the 4, at the 5 will be Philip Rebraca, who is a tweener but also a veteran that can somewhat hang with the Giants in the Big Ten. He won't blow you away on either side of the ball, but he's solid and does what is needed. Despite his tweener status, he still has 115.5 offensive rating and 14.2 net rating. This is no slouch at the center position. In the backcourt are Tony Perkins and Aaron Eulis. Aaron Eulis is no Jordan Bohannon, but he's solid enough. Whether starting or not, he provides Iowa a solid piece. Tony Perkins is the other guard, and what I've seen from him is really impressive. He ended last year red hot, eventually getting a starting spot. At 6'4", 210 pounds of pure muscle, Tony Perkins is a big body. He can bully his way inside. Yeah, he only shot 33% from 3 last year, and I worry about Iowa's overall contribution from the 3-point line this year with the loss of Bohannon, but Perkins can still score well. He's also one of their better defenders, and defense is such a huge issue for Iowa. He should thrive in a starting spot and expect a mini breakout. Patrick McCaffrey and Peyton Sanford will compete for the small forward starting spot. Both these players might be the most important to Iowa's success. Both need to take big steps up this year in the offense for Iowa to remain in the top 5. Seemingly everyone has predicted a Sanford breakout year, and it's hard to hate on the pick. In his limited minutes last year, he was great. Expect him to start the season as a 6th man, but eventually get in the starting lineup. In 10 minutes per game last year, Sanford had 118 offensive rating and was 4th in points per 40 with a 19.3, all as a freshman. His shooting splits were impressive too. I was going to need him to take a big step up. The same goes for Patrick McCaffrey. Last year, he was 3rd on the team in points per game with 10.3. But with Iowa losing Keegan Murray's 23.6 points per game, he's going to need to step up the production. He needs to improve on his 31.2% 3-point percentage, but his stroke looks clean and he should be able to do it. If he can be a little better and more efficient on offense, the Iowa offense won't miss a beat. The depth isn't great, but isn't horrible either. Both 3-star recruits Desante Brown and Josh Dix should be fine off the bench. Connor McCaffrey can be a scoring spark plug off the bench, as last year he had actually the 2nd highest offensive rating on the team with a ridiculous 130.8 offensive rating. Josh Ogundela at 6'11", 265 pounds should provide Iowa with a massive body to help Philip Rebraca when he is tired. The team will definitely regress from their 1.150 offensive efficiency, which was good for the 4th best offensive efficiency in the country, but I still think they will have a lethal offense. At this point, we know who Iowa is. A lethal offense who plays at a breathtaking pace but struggles at defense. If you like scoring, they're the Big Ten team to watch. If there's any team in Tier 3 I'm most confident of staying in Tier 3, it is Iowa. Without a player like Keegan Murray, I just do not see them sneaking up to Tier 1 or 2. But they have too much high-end talent to be in Tier 4, and I think they'll be just fine this season. I am confident in 6 for the Hawkeyes. My top contender in Tier 3 and my 5th best Big Ten team is Purdue. Purdue had an electric team last year and finished in 3rd with a 14-6 record in the Big Ten. This is another team the media's down on because of all their losses this season. They lost sophomore stud Jaden Ivey, who provided the energy and the star that Purdue needed. They also lost Trayvon Williams, who was the second best offensive player and gave Edey rest off the bench. They also lost steady point guard Eric Hunter Jr. and 3-point sniper Sasha Stefanovic. So who does Purdue have in the starting five? Well, no big deal, because this team will be centered around the mammoth of a man known as 7'4" Canadian Zach Edey. Yes, you heard that right, 7'4", and he is shockingly smooth down low for a man that size. A lot will be on his shoulders as he only played 19 minutes per game last year. Can his conditioning be good enough, and can he stay out of foul trouble? If the answer is no, then this prediction might be in trouble, as Purdue starts tumbling to the bottom of Tier 3 and maybe even into Tier 4. This is another pick that might bite me in the ass. But if Edey does thrive, this team is going to be dominant inside. Surrounding Edey is Mason Gillis, who can play the 4-3, and while inconsistent, showed great flashes last year. This is evidenced by his 133 offensive rating, which led the team. The other reason I have Purdue so high is I expect Gillis to break out and become a star. Again, if not, this pick might be in trouble. Freshman 4-star recruit Fletcher Lawyer should start at the 2, and his quick adaptation to the Big Ten might be key to Purdue's success. He can be a potential mismatch with a wide wingspan and staying at 6'5". Brandon Newman is another key player for Purdue. He most likely will be their starting point guard. He only averaged 5 points last year on not great numbers, but stuck behind Eric Hunter Jr., he didn't have a lot of time to shine. I have faith he can be a solid point guard in the Big Ten, like a slightly worse Eric Hunter Jr. If he can finally break through, Purdue can start shaping a scary starting five. Ethan Morton is also a fine piece. He doesn't have a lot of athleticism, but he does the little things right, evidenced by his 21.7 net rating. No one is scared of him, but he isn't that bad, and he shoots 43% from 3 last year, which will help with floor spacing. They do not have a lot of depth, but their depth is interesting. Utah transfer David Jenkins Jr. can shoot their 3 ball really well, averaging 41.3% from deep in his 4-year career. He can come off the bench as a scoring spark. 4-star recruit Cameron Hyde and 3-star recruit Braden Smith can be interesting pieces off the bench, and Caleb First in his limited minutes was an efficient scorer, as he was second on the team with a 56.4% field goal percentage, and his 125.4 offensive rating is really good as well. Expect him to get more minutes off the bench. Without an explosive player like Ivey or a true explosive wing, I think Purdue's upside is limited. I don't see them breaking into Tier 2 or 1, or replicating their 1.153 offensive efficiency last year, which was good for the 3rd best offensive efficiency in the country. That said, they're a very solid team with a giant at the helm, and though it may be risky, I see them as the 5th best team in the Big Ten, and maybe not our favorite in Tier 3 for March Madness, but still, in the regular season, leading Tier 3. For a team that lost their whole core in a season, other than Edey, 5th is not a bad place to be at all. That is my Tier 3 interesting pieces rankings for the Big Ten. Hope you enjoyed the video. Follow the TikTok CBB report. Subscribe, like, turn on notifications, and comment your thoughts. Where was I right? Where do you think I went wrong? Let me know down below, and thank you for watching. Have a good day.